when I was completing my graduate degree, I was like, really into running at this point. So as I was working as a dietitian, becoming a dietitian and starting my dietitian career, I was becoming more and more into running. So
Hmm.
as I was completing my degree, I was like, what'd be really fun is to like help other runners with their nutrition because obviously nutrition plays such a big role in how well you run or how well you perform as an athlete. You don't even have to run, you could be, a triathlete, you could be someone who just cycles, you could be someone who just swims, like any kind of athlete, you've got to have good nutrition. So
You are listening to the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast with your host, Eric Logan. No Gimmicks, Just Sweat is dedicated to hearing the journeys and unique stories behind an athlete's training and what drives them. Get inspired to own your life and make the impossible possible. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a few seconds to rate the show and drop me a review. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of No Gimmicks, Just Sweat. And today we will welcome Miss Jackie Kirchner to the show. Jackie, how are you doing?
I am happy to be here, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. Staying warm in this cold weather.
Oh, you're in like Georgia, right? Didn't you
Yes.
guys get some snow?
Well, Georgia got snow. We got little flurries and dusting down here, but it wasn't, like it was in North Georgia.
Okay. So I'm in Illinois and I'm a Minnesota girl growing up. So snow is something I grew up with. So when I first heard that like the state of Florida or Georgia or any place down south like shuts down when they get snow, is like that's silly. But
I've
I
heard that
get it now.
before. I hear that regularly from people I talk to that up north.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, down here, as soon as it just like a single snowflake falls, it's like, okay, time to shut down everything. Go home.
Yep. Well, I guess if you don't have anywhere to treat the roads or anything, it would be a hot mess.
Right. Well, I think Georgia has learned their lesson from past mistakes.
Let's hope so.
Yes. All right. As with every show, we kind of start with a little warm up. That's pretty much just some icebreaker questions. It allow not just me to get to know you a little bit better, but also for the guests listening to get to know you better. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Morning runs or evening runs?
Ooh, morning runs, like 95% of the time.
Yep.
Yep.
See, we're starting off on a good foot. Morning runs.
Yep, absolutely. It's a good
All
way
right.
to start the day.
Yes. All right. Solo runs or group runs?
Most of the time I prefer solo. Once in a while a group run is fun, but solo runs, they're just kind of time for me. And it's just like really just me time, reflection time. So,
Yep.
solo.
Yep. I feel the same. And plus, you have to have a good group of people to run with.
Yeah, you've got to like be at the same pace, you got to get along, you've got
Right.
to like find a place that, accommodates a group if you're gonna, you know, I don't know, you can't be on some narrow road that doesn't really have a shoulder and expect to be side by side.
Right. All right. Trail runs or road runs?
Road runs. Maybe someday trail runs. I'm a little intimidated, like falling. Especially when it's dark out, I guess I worry about my footing.
Well, yeah, yeah. But see, once you kind of fall that first time, then you're a true trail runner. Then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just have to go into it with that attitude, like I'm just gonna do that right now. I'm gonna be a trail runner.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite race distance to run?
Ooh, I go back and forth on this. Um, so sometimes I say a marathon, but it takes a lot of work to train for. So a half marathon is like a fun distance. But sometimes like I love to hate a 5K because it's just over so fast, and if you do it right, like you're dead at the end. so it's hard
Right.
to say.
It,
But I'd say my least favorite is a 10K. I don't know why, I just don't love a
really?
10K. Yeah, I
Really?
love to run an easy 6, but to race a 10K is just not my favorite.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why. It just is.
Okay. All right. What's your dream race to run? It can be anywhere in the world.
Mm. Right now, the top of my bucket list is the New York City Marathon. I've just never heard anything but really good things about it. So I want to run. That's the top of my bucket list right now.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. If you can go on a run with any celebrity or athlete, dead or alive, who would it be?
Hmm. Oh, I mean, there's so many people I'd love to go for a run with. Um, like right now, just because she just got the American world record in the marathon, I'm gonna say Kira D'Amato.
Okay.
Because she like rocked it in Houston yesterday,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so yeah, why not her? Feeling inspired.
There you go. All right. Last one. Dream location anywhere in the world you want to go for a run.
So, as I said at the top, I'm a Minnesota girl at heart. That's where I grew up. So I love running by lakes. So I think that Lake Tahoe, I would love to go for a lake some or go for a run somewhere along Lake Tahoe.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, Lake Tahoe. See, now I'm gonna Google and kind of look around that area. I was like, ooh, why is
I
she in
think
Lake?
there would be some good scenery.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
My dream dream location to run has always been Hawaii.
Ooh.
Just to get
Mhm.
along the coast, with the water and everything.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, hmm, against the water. Anything that's against water would be just a great place to go running.
I agree. Especially if you've got like the water and like something like mountains, or I guess in Hawaii it would be more like volcanoes.
Yeah.
Actually, like uh like the Vancouver area would be awesome, or up in Alaska, just, especially
Oh,
when
okay.
you're like on the coastline and mountains. Yeah, I could get into
Okay.
that.
See, my mind is kind of going now, like, ooh, these are other places. Okay, they're in the U.S. or North America. So yeah, okay,
Mhm. Yeah, and then we've got the whole world to explore too. I mean, we barely scratched the surface.
exactly. All right, so Jackie, let's get into you. Let's talk about how you became the athlete that you are today, as well as how you got into becoming a registered dietitian. Again, think of it as your origin story. I always say, think of yourself as a superhero, which you kind of are. As an athlete, you are a
Yeah.
superhero. Um,
Yeah.
and just kind of just share your story.
All right. Well, we'll start athlete first. As a kid, I was kind of a shy and quiet kid, not super sporty. I hated the mile when I was like in elementary school, but when I became like a teenager, I started riding my bicycle for long distances. And for a couple years in high school, I was out for track and I always ran the mile and the 2 mile, even though I just told you that I didn't like the mile at that time. Like I was really always more of an endurance person. I've never been a sprinter. Um, I would have gone out for cross country, I think, but my school just was too small. We did not have a team. So um, I was like, like kind of into biking, kind of into running. Um, and when I went to school, college, I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison. For my freshman year, I went out for the rowing team, actually. Really fun. I was not great, but it was still fun and a lot of work. um, so yeah, I guess I was a college athlete for a short time there. Throughout my college career, I kind of would, ride my bike or go for a run, but I was never, um, like super dedicated. I was dedicated to being active, but I wasn't dedicated to a single sport.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. After college, I got really into cycling actually. I would ride my bike all over and would do long distances. But then my boyfriend, who later became my husband, started training for a half marathon. And after he did a couple, I decided I wanted to try one too. And then he wanted to do a marathon, so I decided I was going to do it with him. So this was a long time ago now. So that was 2011, and so we ran the Twin Cities Marathon in 2011. That was my first marathon. It's a really good race, actually. I do recommend it, especially for like a first timer.
Mm-hmm.
Although there is a bit of a hill at the end. But anyway, um, but it's a well put on race. It's not like too small, but it's not ginormous either.
Okay.
So I ran that, and then I continued to run, but I didn't run another marathon until Chicago in 2016. And that, like, it almost like changed everything because it was so fun. Like, the crowd support was so infectious, and there was so much cheering, and um, I was faster, so that helped. So, Chicago 2016, and then I did it again in 2017, and basically, I just haven't looked back. I just continue to run, and pretty much every year, my mileage continues to go up, or I get more serious, and um, yeah, I just really enjoy it. I love the community of runners. Racing is fun, even though I don't do, I mean, even if there weren't any races, I would still run. I know there's runners out there that need a race, and that's fine. And I love a race, don't get me wrong, but I don't need to race.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, so yeah, that kind of brings us up to, well, sort of. So I've ran 8 marathons at this point.
Okay.
Um, I ran Chicago a handful or a couple times. I ran Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota a couple of times. I've ran Boston and the virtual Boston, and upcoming Boston is my next upcoming marathon this April. So, I've done several half marathons, 5Ks, and as you might imagine, not very many 10Ks.
I wonder why.
I think they're also harder to find, if I'm honest. But maybe I'm not looking for them either.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's probably true. You caught me.
Yep, see, there you go.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I came to running. I still really do enjoy riding my bike. I just tend to spend a lot more of my like dedicated energy to running. So, um, you know, one of these years it'll maybe even out, and if not, that's okay. Like I'm feeling pretty good about the amount that I'm running right now. So, yeah, it's been a fun journey. Um, you know, if you would have told like 8-year-old me who didn't like the mile that she would one day uh, run several marathons for fun and pay to do them, she would have thought you were crazy, but here we are.
Well, I think several people kind of have that because, a common theme I hear from a lot of people is that, when they were in school, when they were younger, they didn't enjoy running. And now they love running as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fairly common, I think. Especially when you're young or like in gym class, like you have to run, it's almost like a punishment. Like,
Right.
okay, you gotta
Yeah.
go run laps because you guys were naughty.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That it's kind of when you're younger, when you're in school, or participating on a sports team, running is kind of viewed as punishment because it's like go do laps.
Yep.
Versus now where it's like okay, I'm just gonna get up and go run. But people kind of look at you kind of crazy, when you're out there running like I was this morning in 30-degree weather.
Yeah, I hear ya. Well, I think there's something for everyone. Running is for a lot of people, it's not for everyone, and that's okay.
Right,
I guess
exactly.
that just means more for us.
Yeah, of course. More of the road for us.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to the, talking about your career as a dietitian, let's talk a bit more about running. So,
Okay.
how, what does a day or a week of training with you look like?
So right now, I'm running 5 days a week. Now, typically in the last couple years, I run 6 days a week, but I found myself with a hip strain last summer. Uh, so I'm still kind of rehabbing that. I took several weeks off, actually like a couple months off, and then slowly got back into it with like very slow, easy pace, flat running, and I'm now like building up speed again, building up endurance again, um, building up, different terrain.
Hmm.
So right now it's 5 days a week of running. I would say so 30 to 35 miles per week. I will increase that over the next couple months, but I don't want to get too high. Like I have run like 55-ish miles per week before. That's
Oh,
55 to 60 is yeah, it's a lot.
yeah.
Um I don't see that happening anytime in the next couple of months. Just with my hip still
Right.
um not being 100%.
Hmm.
So um I'm trying to do more cross training, get back on the bicycle, maybe get in the pool a little bit if I can. I'm not a great swimmer, but hey, it's good cross training and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's it's good for me. So, and yoga, trying to do yoga a couple times a week, even if it's only like 15 minutes, lots and lots of stretching, and strength training. I try to get in like a solid strength training session a couple times a week. So, I mean, I would say like I have a solid rest day, but I've got like 5 or 6 days where I'm fairly active, but only 5 of them that I'm running.
Okay. And are you self-coach or do you have a coach?
Right now, because I'm still coming back from this injury, I'm not currently with a coach. It will happen again. I was with a coach for well, since like May of 2019. Um, Great coach, um, John Ranieri of McCurdy trained, so he's awesome. It will happen again soon, but I just haven't, I've just still been building up, so haven't been working with him for a little while.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's kind of go into your job. You are a registered dietitian.
This is correct. I am.
Okay. So what came first? You being a registered dietitian and then you started really running, or were you a runner first and then got into the dietitian, becoming a dietitian?
Hmm. Well, technically, I became a dietitian after I ran my first marathon.
Okay.
However, I mean, I went to school for nutrition and did my internship. So, like, I was running throughout the whole process
Okay.
of like becoming a registered dietitian, which I guess I didn't tell you my superhero origin story of that. So, but
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's go into that then.
yeah, so um, as you said, I'm a registered dietitian. I went to school for that at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Um, and so basically, it's a 4-year degree. And then after that, you have to do an internship, which is almost a year worth of hours, and typically it's unpaid. Mine was definitely unpaid. So I did my internship through Viterbo University in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then ended up working. mostly in the community for a while. I worked as a dietitian with the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children program. So I would counsel moms on healthy nutrition for themselves and their babies. The moms as they were like pregnant and breastfeeding, and then kids up to age 5.
Okay.
And then I got a job um, at a hospital, and so I have a lot of experience working with multiple medical conditions like heart disease, diabetes, you know, inflammatory bowel diseases, things like that. Um, I went to grad school at through the University of Alabama. I did that all online. Um, and then, so I was working at a hospital, and when I was completing my graduate degree, I was like, really into running at this point. So as I was working as a dietitian, becoming a dietitian and starting my dietitian career, I was becoming more and more into running. So
Hmm.
as I was completing my degree, I was like, what would be really fun is to like help other runners with their nutrition, because obviously nutrition plays such a big role in how well you run or how well you perform as an athlete. You don't even have to run, you could be, a triathlete, you could be someone who just cycles, you could be someone who just swims, like any kind of athlete, you've got to have good nutrition. So, but just given that I was so into running, I was like, I want to help other runners with their nutrition. So, I kind of started transitioning and started seeing clients outside of my hospital work hours, and um, I just realized, oh my gosh, this is like so much fun. Like I get to help people, I get to connect with them on a, on a different level than I could, in a hospital, because we have similar interests and hobbies, and um, just to help them like really see how help them make changes and then see the positive effects of that, and then just get to share and celebrate with them. It's just so much fun.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the questions I want to ask, and I'm a firm believer that if you don't know something, ask. And I know other people have kind of wondered this too. Is there a difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
Yes. So, a registered dietitian is someone who has gotten at least a bachelor's degree, and pretty soon they're going to require the master's degree, but they've gotten at least a bachelor's degree in clinical nutrition, and then they've completed this internship that I mentioned, which is like 1,200 hours of supervised practice. And then we sit for an exam. And then, of course, we have to complete like a certain amount of continuing education to stay up with our credential. So that's like in order to like legally be a dietitian, you have to do all of that and then keep yourself up to date with our credentialing board and et cetera, et cetera. Um, nutritionist, there's definitely like programs out there that are better than others, but in general, all dietitians are nutritionists, but not all nutritionists are dietitians. Like almost anyone could call themselves a nutritionist, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. There's really no regulation as far as using the name nutritionist, but there's regulation in calling yourself a dietitian and being a dietitian.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So some programs that offer, and again, not trying to name any programs, not trying to badmouth anyone or anything, but there are certain programs out there where people can take courses and classes, and they can kind of become certified to be a nutritionist. That definitely, well, obviously because they didn't fully go to school for the 4 years and do the kind of the internship and stuff is a big difference in that. But
Right.
okay,
Yeah. So like you could do like a nutritionist course online over the course of a weekend and call yourself a nutritionist. Um, so,
Okay. So,
yeah.
so, and I know is it like even with, being a dietitian as well as with a nutritionist, is it kind of like, whereas if you become a doctor, I think you have to be registered, or, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm using wrong terminology, like different states, you can't just go state to state. It's like you have to be licensed and registered in
Hmm.
Georgia, or you have to be licensed and registered in Illinois, and so forth.
Yeah, so I maintain my national credential through our credentialing board, and then I'm also licensed in the state of Illinois. I
Okay.
do have clients all over the country, but there are certain things that I do more like nutrition coaching with them versus like I'm not licensed in every single state, but I am licensed in my own state.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That gives me some clarity and some understanding. So, like I said, if you don't know, you ask.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, a lot of people don't know the difference, and a lot of people will just call me a nutritionist, which is true. I mean, it's not wrong, but there's a lot more that goes into becoming a dietitian.
You kind of
So,
feel insulted when they call you the nutritionist, right?
yeah, a little bit. Like, but I did a lot more than just like take a course over the weekend. Did a
Right.
lot of work for that.
Right. Yeah, I went to school, spent a bunch of time.
Bunch of time, bunch of money.
Exactly. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask this question here. Why do you think so many people, when it comes to nutrition and diet and let's talk specifically towards athletes, runners, multi-sport athletes, like triathletes, duathletes, um,
Hmm.
why do you think that so many of them just can't get it right?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think there's probably multiple reasons. So, when I talk to people, clients, potential clients, some of it comes down to knowledge, right? Like, there's information out there, um, but there's not always, sometimes it's hard to find the information you're looking for. Um, Sometimes, especially when it comes to eating as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, you usually, if you really wanted to learn how to eat as an athlete, you're probably not going to be able to go to your local hospital or clinic and ask the dietitian there, um, because he or she probably does not specialize in sports or performance nutrition. Um, so knowledge is a big one, because there are certain, specialized needs that we have as athletes. Um, Another thing I think is accountability, and I think you could say that for almost any population. Sometimes people just need a little accountability or some way to help them stay on track, or they just uh, operate better that way. Sometimes with sports nutrition, it can be kind of tricky to figure these things out on your own, especially if you're not really sure what direction you're heading. So, to go along with the knowledge, like some people are really confused by conflicting information out there, or they might have some information, but they're not sure how to actually apply it. So, they're just kind of feel like they're stumbling around trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And which, I understand. It is also just kind of unfortunate because you know that if you get it right, your performance can be so much better and you can feel so much better while you're working out and afterwards. You can recover so much faster. So I think those are some of the probably most common reasons why people have such a tough time when it comes to nutrition as an athlete.
Yeah, and I think too, in the information age, we look at things what we see online. and
Mhm.
what we see successful athletes doing, and we
Mhm.
go like, ooh, this worked for so and so athlete.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
it'll
that
work
worked for
for me.
Kipchoge. Maybe it'll work for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that really, like you were saying, that a lot of times people don't really, you know, have resources to go to, like you were saying, your local clinic and stuff. They might not know, specifically from a sports or athlete standpoint on what to recommend and what to look for,
Mhm.
you know, you
Right.
as a dietitian. Um, and
Right.
it can be just a little bit confusing. Again, you have what you're seeing online. Then you hear this person doing this, you see this person doing that, you talk to different runners, different athletes, and so it kind of gets a little bit confusing.
Right. It does get a little bit confusing. You're right. Like, this person does this thing, this person does something else. How do you actually apply it? What's the real thing? And also, with these professional athletes, when you hear about what they're doing, remember that they've been at this for years and years. They've got dedicated people helping them figure it out. They've got, lots of resources. Um, and they've probably trained themselves up to be able to do that. Versus if you do exactly what they're doing, um, it probably isn't going to work out the greatest for you because they probably just didn't one day wake up and start doing that. It was probably a process. Not to mention that everyone's just a little bit different, so we can't expect that everyone is going to eat the exact same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are common mistakes that runners or just athletes in general make in regards to their nutrition?
Um, I think one of the things is that so often we see the part where are physically active and we're going to go out and do the track workout, we're going to do the long run, we're going to go out for the long ride, whatever. We see that as non-negotiable and we're going to like do everything we can to make sure that that workout happens. And then we don't put any thought into, well, how are we going to fuel that run? How are we going to fuel that ride? What are we going to do afterwards in order to recover faster so that we can, get up the next day and do it again or do something similar again? So it's almost like sometimes people see the workout as essential and the nutrition part as optional. And I want to argue that the nutrition part is not optional. You might be able to get away with, kind of winging it for a while, but eventually it's going to come and bite you, and you're going to do so much better and feel so much better once you get that nutrition part figured out. So that's probably a really big mistake that I see people make. Is just not really considering it.
Okay. So going out and let's say for instance, I got a race on Saturday, and it's not a good idea to go out and carb load on Friday night.
Right. With carb loading, well, not every race needs a carb load.
Right.
So you don't need to carb load for a 5K, for example.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're gonna wait till Friday night, you're you waited so long. You could be in a much better position had you started, Tuesday or Wednesday. Um, so yeah, sometimes with carb loading, people wait too long. Sometimes people um, eat new foods. Sometimes people, and that usually doesn't end well unless you have an iron stomach. But I
Right.
usually recommend people like don't do anything new on race day, and really that includes the day before. Um, yeah, actually, if anyone on here is interested in carb loading, I have a free guide to carb loading. You can just go to my website. There's a little pop-up form and I'll give you everything that you need to know about how to carb load effectively and actually do it right for your next race.
See, that's why you go see someone who knows what they're talking about, like Jackie.
Yes. Yes, I'm here to help. So I'll just, yes, my website, I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
www.jackiekirchnernutrition.com. So,
And again, it will be in the notes and it will be in the description. So if anybody missed that, you'll have another opportunity to look it up.
yep, we'll get it to you.
All right, here's another one that's kind of controversial because I think it's based upon who you ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Now, me personally, I've done intermittent fasting since 2019, and
Mm-hmm.
it worked for me. You know, you know
Yep.
that was my best performance year as far as running and being a new athlete. But before I even did it, I did due diligence and research.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke with my doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and so and again, like I said, it worked for me. But depending on who you ask, there are some people who say, no, don't do it if you're an athlete, endurance athlete. And some people saying yes. So it's kind of, I always say I don't recommend it to anyone unless you've done your own research and gotten your own, conversation with your doctor or dietitian about it. So
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that you really made some great points in that you have to really do your research and do your due diligence and know what you're getting into. And don't just like wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm going to start intermittent fasting.
Right.
I'm sure you came at it from an approach of this being like a whole lifestyle change rather than a diet. And people get into a lot of trouble when they just view things like, oh, this is a diet, this is like my latest, like weight loss scheme, whatever, which rarely works out. Um, I am not a big fan of intermittent fasting personally, but I also know that I mean, like my way of eating isn't the same way of eating that works for everyone, and I believe that everyone can find a way that works for them. So, and I am happy to, be there and help someone figure that out and what that looks like. Um, so yeah, just don't go intermittent fast just because someone says, "Oh, this worked for me."
Right.
And don't get discouraged if you try it and it didn't work. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It just means that it wasn't right for you. Um, so yeah, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
do your research, and there is no one size fits all. Um, and you
And,
know,
and
it's a whole lifestyle.
right. And the bottom line is that, you know, everything doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
It's so much you have to take in consideration, when it
Hmm.
comes to, the food you intake and how it will affect your body and affect your performance.
Yep.
When you start looking at genetics, when you start looking at your metabolism, and just so many different factors come into play, you know, yeah, that there's a reason why certain diets, and I'm doing quotes, air quotes right now, even though you can't see me, certain diets work for certain people and they
Yep.
don't work for other people.
Right. Right. I mean, you've got to like do things that work for you. And, if you are someone that, works out really early in the morning, but then you're gonna like try intermittent fasting and you're not gonna, eat till much, much later in the day, that could definitely affect your performance. Or if you decide that your eating window is gonna be like, I don't know, say noon to 8 or noon to 6, but you work 12-hour shifts and you rarely get time for a break, you know, probably that isn't going to work for you very well.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah, there is no one size fits all. Just because something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And
Right.
so, yeah. Um, and maybe that's another reason why people get discouraged is because, you know, sometimes it takes time to figure out exactly what works for you.
Right.
Um,
Well, and I think again, this is why I always say that if you don't know, do your research, and if you from your research, if you still can't find the answer, go see someone that can really help you find the answer, because you could be looking at something from a totally different direction, and
mhm.
if you go see someone who someone like Jackie, that's a promotion, who knows this and has studied this, they may look at it from a different angle and make you see something, that you probably didn't think about or didn't see that can be beneficial to you.
Right. Yeah. And um as a dietitian, as a person, as an athlete, like I want to support the people that I work with and cheer them on and help them figure out what works. And so, if you're a client of mine, we're going to do the work together to figure out what works and make you feel your best. And, if that ends up being intermittent fasting, we're going to like work with that and tweak it to make sure that you can still perform at a really high level. And if it ends up being that intermittent fasting or whatever you had in mind doesn't work for you, just keep an open mind because probably you're going to be pleasantly surprised and find out, like, hey, even though this is what I had in mind, I'm doing something different. I feel so much better.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
So let's kind of step back into you as a runner.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of ask you something that's kind of a two-part question here.
Okay.
What was your proudest moment as a runner? And then the second part of that question is, what is your worst moment or the biggest mistake you've made as a runner?
Hmm. Um, I think that my proudest moment is probably going to be a toss up. When I finished my first marathon in 2011, that was really, I mean, really, it was pretty incredible. I never thought that I could run 26.2 miles in one go. Like that, just a couple years prior to that, I would have thought, like, what the, what? No, like, like, so finishing that, it was almost even before I finished it. I think it was around mile 22 or 23 when I realized I was actually going to do it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Um, and crossing that finish line was like one of the best feelings. I mean, I was sore, I was tired, I didn't feel great, but it felt so good to finish. And it just, yeah, there was a lot of pride there. Um, but then also when I qualified for Boston the first time, it was at Grandma's Marathon in 2018,
Hmm.
and I blew my old PR out of the water by like 16 minutes.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, huge, huge. I was not expecting it. I mean, I knew I was going to be able to come pretty close to qualifying, but
Hmm.
then I like beat the qualifying window by like over 10 minutes. I think I had a like 10 plus 11-minute buffer or something.
Hmm.
And, I went into it like hoping that I would just at least, meet the qualification. And so that was pretty incredible too. When I realized like, oh my God, I'm doing it. It was that that was really awesome. Um, yeah, so those were pretty great moments in my running career. And then as far as like a mistake, was that the other part?
Yeah. Your worst moment or the biggest mistake you ever made?
Okay. You know, this isn't the first time I've told this story, but I don't make it very loud. Um, so when I was training for that first marathon, um, I went on a 20-mile long run and, you know, even though I had a background in nutrition, I was not an expert in sports nutrition, and apparently I did not fuel properly either leading up to or during that run. So I went out for a 20-mile training run and I hit the wall. I bonked so hard. Like, I think it was about 3 or 4 miles from home, and I had to go up over this big bridge and then back down. And then from there it was flat all the way home. But I was running with uh, my husband, and I looked at that bridge and I was like, there is no way, no way I will get over that. Literally no way. And sure enough, he picked me up and carried me up the bridge. I
Oh,
walked down. A block away, we found a cop, and he knocked on the door. He was like, "Can you give us a ride home? Because I don't think she's gonna make it." And he was like, "Are you sure you don't need the hospital?" He's like, "No, I think we just need a ride home." Oh my God, very embarrassing. Um, but this is just to say, like, you can bonk hard and live to tell the tale. Right now, I think it's actually pretty funny, but
well,
in
if
the
you can
moment,
laugh
it
about it,
felt terrible.
if you can laugh about it now, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a positive thing.
Yeah, but that was a big mistake. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I tried to think back what, but at this point it was like 10 years ago, so I'm not really sure what happened. I know I brought water, I know I brought gels, but something happened and
Yeah.
here we are.
All right. So if you had access to a time machine, what would you go back and tell the younger Jackie that anything something that you know now that you didn't know when you were younger?
Mm, I guess I would just tell myself that I am capable of so much more than I ever thought was possible. Um, and maybe I should tell that to myself now, looking forward to my future, because it probably hasn't changed. We're all hardest on ourselves, but as I said, I I didn't think I would be able to run a marathon. I didn't actually think that I would qualify for Boston, and now I've run 4 marathons at, Boston qualifying time. I didn't think I would be the type of person that would start a business. I didn't think that I would be the type of person that would pivot in her career. And I know I didn't pivot in that, you know, totally change careers, but, I went from working with different populations and different working styles. So, um, just like don't put limits on yourself, and you're capable of so much more than what you think. So, like, go out there and be wrong about what you can do.
Right. That's good advice. That's some good advice. And what would your message to people who say that it's too late to start running? A lot of times people, you know, you try to get them to start running, and let's say they're older, they have more responsibilities, family, work, things like that. And if you try to bring up like, oh, you try to, go running, not necessarily to run a race, but just running for better health, and physically as well as mental health. What would you say to people who say, oh, it's too late for me to start running?
I would say, A, there's no time like the present. Like, you're not going to ever be able to go back in time, or at least not that I'm aware of. So
Right.
there's really no better time than now. And really, I mean, assuming you're going to live another 20 to 50 years, aren't you going to, like, wish that you had started today instead of never? Like, you know, future you 10 years down the line might be like, well, I could have started when I was 40 and it wouldn't have been the end of the world. Like, like now I'm 50, like, or whatever age you are.
Right.
There's just really just no time like the present, and you deserve that time for yourself. So if you want it just for physical health, you want it for mental health, and you're going to use it for that, well, you kind of need to start now because you're not going to have as good of a mental or physical health if you're not active.
Right. Right. Great advice. All right. So, what is a non-running fact about you that most people don't know?
Well, if you follow my Instagram, you know that I have a corgi named Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like to compare her to a loaf of bread. And I also do a lot of bread baking myself. So I'm a baker in that I love baking bread. I have a corgi lover. I love to read a book. Actually, there we go. When I was a kid, I would just sit there and read book after book after book after book. I still really enjoy reading. I just don't do it as much as I did when I was younger.
Okay. All right. Is there anything that that's next for you? I know you said you're preparing for the Boston Marathon. Is there anything else outside of Boston that you're getting ready for?
I'm not really sure yet. I think I'm gonna wait till see what happens the rest of the year, get through Boston and see what I'm um, in the mood to do. Most years recently have been very focused on performance, and I think that's great. But this year, I think I just want to focus on having fun and having as much fun as possible and just enjoying the process. Because if you don't enjoy the process, it doesn't matter what result you get. It's not going to, the destination feels like the journey, and if the journey sucks, then the destination's going to suck too. So I just want to enjoy the journey.
Yeah. Hey, couldn't say it better myself. It's about having fun. It's the what I'm trying to think the best way to word it. You have to have fun in the challenge.
Yep. Yes,
All right.
you do.
Any last words you want to share with the listeners?
Um, Come talk to me. I love connecting with this community. Everyone's just so fun and friendly. So, come find me on Instagram. Come to my website. Even if we never work together directly, I'd love to hear, your thoughts or hear you introduce yourself to me. And, that's a really cool thing about things like social media and podcasting. You can meet people from all over the world and, you know, that I never would otherwise know or meet. So even people in my own town I've met because of, you know, of doing this. So it's fun. Come say hi.
Okay. And with that being said, how can people get in contact with you?
I'm so glad you asked. So I am on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at fuelbetter.runfaster. Pretty active over there. I did start a YouTube channel as well. I am JK, the running dietitian, over on YouTube. You can find me on a website, www.jackiekirchnernutrition.com. And there, like I said before, you can sign up for my free guide to carb loading. I have blog posts over there. You can find out a little bit more about me and what I do with clients. Because if you're interested in working with me, that's where I would, come see me anywhere, but send me a message on Instagram or through my website. And I'd be happy to set up a quick chat with you and see how I could help you improve your nutrition and help you reach all of your running goals. And they don't have to be just to go faster or go farther. It could just be like staying injury free or having fun. So
Awesome. Jackie, it has been great talking with you.
this has been a good time. I'm really glad you had me on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in each week. If you enjoyed today's show, please support us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. so we can continue to have awesome conversations with everyday athletes just like you. Until next time, have an amazing week.